Welcome to Advertising in America, the podcast where we meet entrepreneurs where they're at in their marketing and bust through their bottlenecks, breakpoints, and blind spots. Hosted by Wizards Ryan Shute and the Royal Torbay twins, where we put the fun in marketing fundamentals. Are you ready to dominate your marketplace? Are you ready for outrageous advertising? Do you want to become a household name? Brought to you by Wizard of Ads for Services. Visit us at wizardofads.services to book your free strategy session with Wizard Ryan Shute today.
Welcome back. On today's episode of Advertising in America, we're going to delve into the cryptic world of mind control. Are elite advertisers meddling in the dark arts of MKUltra experiments, or is advertising just a colossal scam? Let's find out. Mick, over to you.
My friend Stephen McQuigg told me about some ad he saw and how it wasn't a good ad. So I asked him, how had he become an expert in advertising? He said, well, I've been watching commercials and listening to them my whole life. Well, based on that theory, I've been watching videos of Eddie Van Halen my whole life. I guess that makes me a guitar virtuoso. The difference between watching a musician play and watching a TV commercial is that you know one of them is trying to influence you. Eddie's just playing guitar. Ford wants me to buy a pickup truck. The difference in our knowledge of that difference is everything. I know so little about the electric guitar, I don't even know which end to blow into. But when it comes to the advertising thing, we know what they're trying to do, when it works and when it doesn't. If I watch that Ford commercial 87 times and don't buy the pickup truck, how can you call that a success? We're exposed to 5 times more advertising messages over the last 10 years, but we don't buy 5 times as much stuff. That's proof that even though we've always been good at ignoring advertising, we're actually getting better at it. Think of the number of ads we're exposed to every day and consider how many cause us to change our minds, switch brands, or try something that we didn't want to try. It's effectively zero, a rounding error. It isn't just you that isn't affected by advertising, it's all of us. Claims that advertising doesn't affect me are probably a bit overstated. We all think we're far too smart to fall for advertising, and obviously, if we were all too smart for it, then there would be no advertising industry at all. You'd be a fool to conclude that everyone is wasting their money on something that's inherently worthless. But be careful when you're telling a consumer that you know them better than they know themselves. They will always push back, and they'll be right. They have the data. If I didn't buy that pickup truck, then the ad didn't affect me. That's just truth.
You blow in the tailpipe, Mick. Chris, what say you?
When I hear this old chestnut, I always say, really? What brand of Nikes are you wearing? Are you driving a Dodge Ram, the most advertised truck in America, or the Ford F-150, the second most advertised truck in America? Or did you make those choices after doing your own research? The simple truth is the world's leading advertisers are generally creating the world's biggest brands. Your pitch is, oh, the advertising seems to be working on hundreds of millions of people, but not my buddy Dave. Really? Of course it does, or millions of companies wouldn't spend billions of dollars in advertising. Corporations are cutting costs wherever they can. You think their high-powered marketing departments are all missing out on what Dave figures out? Turns out advertising doesn't work? What are the odds? Everyone wants to believe it might work on the masses, but not me. They are not the general public. We all like to think we're unique, and that's fine. But put all us unique people together, and we behave like the general public, and you ain't the exception. What is more likely the case is that you often see ads that aren't particularly aimed at you, and when you don't respond, you think that's proof that advertising doesn't change minds. Every time an ad doesn't work on you, you think you're bulletproof. Well, if you don't like cruises, then sure, a cruise ad won't work. If you're a lifelong Bud drinker, then no, a Miller Lite ad may not make you change brands against your will. But you can be damn sure that the things that are aimed at you work just fine on you. And one day, when you get bored with Budweiser, you might very well try Miller Lite.
Chris Torbay, everyone. Less filling, but still tastes great. This whole thing's starting to feel like a Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after we take these handful of shrooms. Hey, listeners. Wizard Ryan Shute here. Want a personalized strategy to instantly 4x the effectiveness of your marketing dollars? Schedule a free call with me at wizardofads.services. We'll chat about your goals and how you can quickly dominate your marketplace. I have limited availability though, so don't delay. Well, I guess you could delay it a bit, but not too much. That'd be like an over delay. So maybe just skip the delay part entirely and book your call just as soon as you're ready to start making money. You certainly don't want to delay that, right? And now, pitter patter. Fun fact, guys. MKUltra was the most infamous mind control project conducted by the CIA from 1950s to the early 70s.
Wow.
Yeah. MKUltra involved experiments on unknowing subjects using drugs, LSD, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and other methods in an attempt to develop techniques for mind control and interrogation. For example, Operation Midnight Climax was a sub-project of MKUltra where the CIA set up safe houses in San Francisco and New York where prostitutes lured the men in. The men were then secretly dosed with LSD and their behaviors were observed and recorded without their knowledge. There is another project that they did, Project Artichoke. Project Artichoke was another CIA project where they that preceded MKUltra in itself. It explored the use of hypnosis and force addiction to morphine, other techniques to create amnesia, and control behavior. Rumors have it that it'll be the premise of the movie Hangover 4.
What could possibly go wrong with this plan?
I think this is a good
Imagine
idea.
going to my client and saying, here's what we're going to do. It doesn't matter what the ad is, but we're just going to give all the viewers morphine first, and then your ad's going to work. Trust me.
It's not like any evil villain has ever said, let's poison the water supply. It's definitely a solid plan. Thanks, CIA. Woohoo. Hope you're watching and enjoy the show. Mick, you said the other day that no one really wants to admit that advertising works on them.
Well, yeah, because it makes us sound like we're all just a bunch of marks, waiting for the television to tell us what to do. And there's a certain truth to that. On the other hand, we would also be fools to suggest that we're not influenced by the things that we see and hear every day.
Absolutely. We're not naive and gullible to have been persuaded subconsciously or consciously by the advertising.
And maybe that's it, is that we would feel like marks if we were admitting that it worked on us against our will. And I guess that was kind of a part of my point there is no one is saying advertising works on you whether you like it or not. We're saying if you are the right person in the right frame of mind with the right needs and you don't have a solution to a problem, the advertising will present a solution that you can then choose using all your faculties. Nobody said you're a rat in a maze.
Well, and also we have to remember that when we're talking about advertising, there's a baseline. And the baseline of advertising in pretty much any category in any market is a group of people who own businesses saying, here's who we are and here's what we sell, which is, of course, answering two questions that nobody is asking. Who are you and what do you sell? So if that's the baseline, is just we have a product that we are prepared to sell for you and we'd like you to do so, that's not very compelling. Yeah, and anybody could say, well, that doesn't move
There's
me.
no particular reason for me to listen to that.
Exactly. But if you can create an ad that answers the question that the consumer is really asking, which is, why is buying from you good for me? Mm-hmm. If you can legitimately answer that question in a way that makes sense to the consumer, people are gonna buy the thing you're selling.
Yeah, and I'm therefore not an idiot for doing that. I'm not a sheep.
Right.
I'm doing it because you said something that was interesting, and I thought through and said, yes, that's actually interesting to me. And then I made a conscious decision. Well, now I'm not a sheep. I'm a smart person because I listened to actual information. Or it made me want to Google you, and then I went to your website and I found out more. And it's like, yeah, these guys totally feel like the brand for me.
Well, and sometimes you've got a category where you have to buy it, like insurance, for example. You have to buy the stuff. It's not an option. You can't just say, well, I'm not going to insure my car. So therefore, the insurance company has a different question to answer.
Yeah. Why you?
Why you?
Right. And Roy always taught us that, look, identity is why people buy. Identity is, we're always trying to tell the world who we are, what we stand for, what we believe in, what our rank, what our class, what our status is within ourselves, within our individuals that we love and care for, and within the tribes that we care about, our community, our companies, our family. And really what it boils down to is every purchase, regardless of what it is us with an internal, deep, underlying need that says, hey, I need to status up. This is the best choice for me because it improves my rank. The company that I choose to work for, the brands that I choose to put on my body, the woman that I choose to spend my life with. All of these things are telling the world where you stand amongst amongst
Yeah, I
the
want to
other
be
people.
seen as the guy who wears Nikes. I want to be seen as the guy who carries an iPhone. I want to be seen as the guy who drives this vehicle or that vehicle.
But not so overt as that, right? We're not doing that out of our egotistical arrogance most of the time. Sometimes we are. But there is an aspiration to elevate ourselves up in our own hearts, in our own feeling. At the end of the day, what we're trying to figure out is how do we influence these people to say, I want to stand with that person, that brand, that guy, that woman for what they're selling, right? That entity, right? Which is our company, our brands, right? I like those colors. I like those shapes. I like the feminine feel of this, the masculine feel of this, the sharp cutting edge of this aesthetic or feel, the softness of this. All of this comes down to representations of ourselves.
Well, you know what? And this goes back to something that Mick said in a previous episode, which is it's not the medium, it's the message, right? It's not that advertising works because advertising works. Advertising works because you've said something that is relevant to that person. And so it's not figuring out that you should advertise or where you should advertise. It's what should your message be. And that's the part that's effective. It's not that if you put something on TV, then mindlessly people will buy it or will come to your store or will order your products. It's the effort goes into what is it that we are going to say to the kind of person we're targeting that is relevant to them, that is motivating to them, that it is aspirational to them, as you say. Yeah. And that's the part that works, the strategy and the messaging, not advertising, not the fact that it is a TV ad or a radio ad or a billboard.
I think the best example of the truth that people buy based on emotion and based on identity, I think beer is the best example of that, because the fluids are absolutely interchangeable. I challenge anybody to pick their own favorite brand of beer if I cover them up. But the Bud drinker, when offered a Heineken, will look at you like you're a lunatic. The Heineken drinker, when offered a Pabst Blue Ribbon, he wouldn't wash his feet in that. And so you've got, the Stella drinker has a certain attitude that is inconsistent with the Miller Lite drinker. It's the same stuff, but people will get angry. They will have an emotional response if they're told they have to,
they don't have your brand, you have to drink this other brand.
Yeah, or it's like, why would I drink that? That's what you get in bowling alleys. It's like, it's freaking beer. It gives you a nice warm buzz. Shut up and drink it. That's not what people actually do, and it's provable.
Yeah. And the nice thing about Pabst Blue Ribbon is that somebody already has washed their feet in it before you got
Probably.
it. So,
but you won't notice, and that's the important.
I think it was the St. Pauli girl.
right.
It might be.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why people buy Apple products versus Samsung. And that's why we have competitors who literally have the exact same products, but one gets to sell it for more than the other based off of these alignments that we're looking at. And that's how profoundly important it is to marketing as a whole. If we're glossing over all of it by asking questions too early, too soon, still questions to ask, but what channel should I be on, and how, what should I put on this ad that I'm doing on Google? We need to step back and really look at what is the big picture here? What are we trying to do? Are we trying to be the premium product in town, or in the country, or in the world? Are we trying to be the low price provider? Are we trying to do something? Are we looking to take over the world, or are we looking to dominate our backyard? All of these things have a dramatic effect on what message should be, and then from the message, what channels we're going to use.
And the interesting thing is, those examples that you give, there is no other way for people to find that out about your brand other than advertising. If I am honestly looking for the cheapest water heater that I could possibly get, my water heater just died, I got no money, I want the cheapest possible solution to get hot water back into my house, I can only look to advertising and hopefully, as you say, find the provider who says we are the low-cost plumber. As soon as I see an ad that answers that question, I have that piece of information. If I am at the other end of the spectrum and I'm trying to upgrade everything in my house, and I want the best dishwasher and the best this, and I want a shower with 8 heads, then what I'm looking for is show me the plumber who's going to give me the imported Italian faucets with the extra here and the multiple controls, and it looks like a spaceship at the front of my shower stall. The only way I can do that is I can look to advertising. So which brand is telling me these things about themselves? You cannot find that information any other way unless you visit the website of every plumber in town, right? Like those pieces of information are not available except in the way that they market themselves.
Yeah.
And then I know what I'm going to get at the dollar store because I know what the dollar store stands for. I know what I'm going to get from Nordstrom's because I know what Nordstrom stands for. And all those things come from the way those two companies advertise themselves.
Well, the alternative is simple. It's go to Google, look at how many stars they have, and look at what the star rating is. Basically, most people on this planet are looking at a star rating of something over 4.5, and a company that has an incredible amount of stars is probably going to be expensive, and the ones that have enough stars are going to probably be the most affordable. I'm going to try them first in the majority of cases. And then the ones who have not enough stars, right, like they're under 100, they're the small guy, and the chances of getting the kind of quality of service I'm looking for. Equal to that is I'm making assumptions as the average consumer that the big company is going to have a better warranty. So I'll go back to your example about the hot water tank and say, yes, I want the cheapest hot water tank. Everything in a grudge purchase, like a car insurance or a hot water tank, would be transactional in nature until you give them some other reason for it to be more than transactional, right? There is a relational component. And when we think about cheapest cost, we really start to think about the three costs of any human being: the money, the energy, and the time, right? So they're looking for convenience before, during, and after the sale. Well, that's a big deal, because if we're able to articulate that before they get to Google, we have an incrementally, distinctly, I would say exponentially higher chance of them considering us over the alternatives, given that basically everyone else is pretty much equal.
Yeah, because they already know a little something about us. They know where we stand on those things, those three things that you talked about. And again, so that the advertising hasn't forced you to make that decision. It's not mind control, but it has primed you for, you know what, I should look into these guys. It's interesting, the number of people who say, well, I did my own research. Well, no one does their own research double blind and totally dispassionately. They don't Google it, look at the top 10 listings, which is already, of course, a sort of some kind, and equally go to the top 10 things and then choose the right one. You don't look at the top 10 brands of sneakers and then decide which one you're going to go to. Well, I read about that air suspension thing, and I think that Nikes are really the ones for me. No. When you are ready, you maybe have a short list of one or two, and that came from the marketing that they have done over the years. Absolutely. You may still make an intellectual decision. You may still do some research and go, you know what, now that I think about it, I like what I read about this when I did a modicum of research. But no one goes in cold.
Right.
And the degree to which you don't go in cold is the advertising working.
And I think that actually matters more if you are a premium provider, if you're not the low-cost provider. If you're the low-cost provider, your message is very simple. I'm the low-cost provider, and I can prove it. That's the only thing.
You've met them at transactional.
Yeah. You meet them there, and all you have to do is prove that you are, in fact, you will charge the least amount of money for this product or service, and then a certain consumer will purchase from you.
Right.
If you are the high-cost provider, if you are a premium product, then you absolutely have to consider what purchasing this brand says about me. If, when I bought my first BMW, I absolutely said to myself, I will now no longer be driving a Volkswagen. I am now going to be driving a BMW. What does that say about me? And it's stupid, because we should be talking about engines and cup holders and fuel efficiency and steering and all that stuff. But in fact, a major consideration is this is going to change how I am perceived by others. Well, where does that shit come from? That comes from marketing.
Yeah.
That's the only place that
there's
can
an
come
interesting, so I used to work on a bunch of major car brands, the most recent which was Porsche. And there was an interesting story that we always told people, and it's partly on this point, but I'm actually going to make a separate point with it, which is when most people go to buy a vehicle, they go shopping and they have a short list of between 2 and 3. The average is like 2.7 vehicles. So you're going to go and buy a mid-sized SUV or something like that. You go look at the CRV, you go look at the 4Runner, or the, whatever the Toyota equivalent is. You probably go look at the Mitsubishi equivalent. You've got this short list. When people buy Porsches, the short list of cars they want to look at is 1.2. They kind of already know they want to buy a Porsche. They may look at an Audi if they're particularly rich. They may look at a Ferrari, but they basically already know what they want to look at. Well, the fact that a car buyer, ignore for a moment the fact that Porsche marketing has made them fall in love with Porsches since they were a 15-year-old boy, and that's why their list is only 1.2. Even at the other side of that equation, the average SUV buyer's already got a list of 2.7 cars. How did they get down to 2.7? There's 20 different things. They have already cut certain ones off their list, and there are a couple of dealerships that they know they are going to want to go to. They know they want to go a Honda, Toyota, and then what are the third and fourth?
Right.
That's the marketing. The marketing has already shortened their list to them. They already find a few, and if it's not Honda and Toyota, then it's Mitsubishi and Kia or something like that. It could be a different short list. But no one goes car shopping with a short list of 15 cars.
Well, I'm going to be so bold as to say it's not just the marketing, but it is the brand forward advertising that we're talking about here, because nobody is getting an impression of a Porsche at Porsche of Toronto.
Yeah.
They're getting their brand impression well before that. As you said, Porsche is playing the extraordinary long game here, and most of the small businesses in this universe aren't in the long game. They've just started. They've been around a long time. Heck, we've dealt with clients 38 years in business, and nobody knew that they existed, right? And they thought they had top of market, and they were running $4.5 million
My
in
dad
sales.
started this company. It says right on their thing, in business since 1981.
Well, if
that's going to help me choose a water heater.
Well, and that's exactly it. If that were true, that 38-year-old company would be at top of market at $4.5 million. But today, after 2 years of advertising with them, they're at $16 million, and they're on their way to $25 million in market share. And that shows you the disproportionate power of story, of branding, of embed. You know, I talk about this with my clients all the time. You guys have heard this 1,000 times, and it's really about the 3 different areas of the brain. We've got the short-term memory that's kind of like the RAM in your computer. It has a 7-second shelf life. It's going to forget basically the thing that doesn't matter in the first 7 seconds or so. And then there's the stuff where we hit them with a little bit more repetition, maybe a little salient, something interesting, something less predictable. And it goes back into that working memory. That lasts about 7 days. Well, that 7 days gets erased by sleep, like defragging an old PC. It's cleaning up the files and getting rid of the old stuff that doesn't really matter a whole lot. Well, and a lot of our clients, they're selling services. They don't want to be remembered, right? The client doesn't want to remember their insurance options or that new guy that they're not trying, particularly if they have a guy, right? They want to know what I'm going to be doing for supper tomorrow night or breakfast in the morning. And as we keep pushing forward with more and more frequency, more and more salient message, that Porsche that people fall in love with when they're 12, well, that's starting to build up in the back of the brain, the chemical part of the brain. Now, I see every form of advertising, certainly brand forward advertising, from truck wraps and logos, certainly, but billboards, radio, TV, all of these impressions cumulatively are stacking up like bricks. Now, if you have a whole bunch of bricks without any emotion, what you have is enough bricks for a pretty solid brick shithouse. And what you don't have is mortar. And mortar is the absolute glue to this. Now, a Stanford study many years ago was researching around PTSD and some other really kind of dramatic emotional experiences, and they found that the chemical release that came from that, from the emotion, was the thing that created the stickiness, the adhesion, the mortar. Now, with mortar and bricks, we can build a McMansion. Right? So we're going from a brick shit house, a wobbly old house of cards, to a McMansion that's glued together with monstrous power of the mortar. And now we have this really stable foundation to live the life in the long-term memory for when you're going to eventually buy that Porsche.
Oh, you know.
And I've got to say, right, I've always thought you were insufferable. You didn't need to buy a BMW.
Remember that saying, only half your marketing is working, you just don't know which half? Let's help you with that. Book a free strategy session with Wizard Ryan Shute today at wizardofads.services. Yes, that's a URL, wizardofads.services. Now let's get back to the show.
Guys, this is a really fascinating conversation. And one of the things that you say all the time that I really resonates with me is that I have a guy.
Always say that guy. I always have a guy. And that means that this provider of whatever it is this person is providing matters so much to me that not only do I always go back, but I make other people go back.
Yeah.
And
you in fact put your reputation on the line on behalf of that person,
of the other guy,
because you have that level
and
of
then
confidence.
if you need tires, I say no, you have to get tires from my guy. And this is, of course, the holy grail of what advertising is trying to accomplish. And there's an inherent contradiction there, because when you're talking about a person like me who is almost the perfect description of the relational consumer. I will always go back to the same restaurant. I'll always go back to the same tire guy. So you definitely, and I'll become an advocate for the people who I like, right? I've got a guy. You have to buy from my guy. Well, the inherent contradiction is, how do you get me to change my mind? Because everybody has a provider of everything. And the point of advertising is to get them to switch. Well, what it means is that to get that relational consumer to switch, they won't switch simply because you tell us that we exist. You have to give me a strong reason why I have to stop doing what I'm doing now and start doing this other thing. Start switching to another guy. Is that easy? No, it's really freaking hard. It takes time and it requires a legitimate reason. You have to answer the question, why should I switch from my current guy to you?
Well, it's interesting. You say we have a provider. So two things. First of all, there are some things which we have a provider and we are married to it and we love it and we're fixated. And then there's others where we're more fluid, right? If I go to the grocery store, there's maybe the bread I'm looking for, but if the other bread from the competitor is next to it and they got a different something this week, maybe I'll switch to it. I don't have a brand loyalty on some things, right? But interestingly, and so if you put another idea, if I see an ad for something, it's like, I should give those a try. It's not like I'm married to my regular brand. On the things where I do have a preferred brand, there's always external triggers that might lead you to explore. So beer's an interesting one. And again, I've worked on a number of the big brands. And there's an interesting thing, you hear this in focus groups, which is you ask somebody, how did they get to be a such and such drinker? And the number of times you hear the same story, well, I used to drink this thing and I drank it all the time. And then, it just started to make me feel bloated. So I changed brands. And you hear it from one brand to the other, so there is no brand out there that makes people bloated versus one that
turns out
does.
Beer makes you feel bloated.
You drink too much beer, you're going to have a bad experience. And then what happens is that kind of puts them off their brand because that was the one that gave them a bad experience at that time. And so they just kind of open their thing. So you can be a diehard Bud drinker for 10 years and then something happens, you have a bad experience. It's like, you know what, maybe I got to stop drinking this stuff. And now the door is open. You are super loyal and there's that opportunity. After watching the competitors' advertising for 10 years, when that trigger comes along and it's
maybe
an external
Miller
trigger,
time
then
after
you go,
all.
well, let me try an MGD and see whether, and then you have one and you don't feel bloated because you don't have 10, and so you go, this is okay. And then you switch. And equally, there are just as many people who were the last 10 years they've been drinking MGD and then they got bloated. And it's so funny that people do this back and forth. So like I said in the intro, just because you see an ad, you're not going to throw away your preferred brand that's been your preferred brand for a decade. But if anything happens to throw things into chaos, that's when the cumulative effect of advertising actually does give you a next step.
Well, and let's think about that from a standpoint of service businesses as an example, because a little more challenging to run than a beer company. In so much as, one, not only does there have to have something happen externally, like a trigger has to happen, like I need to get my insurance renewed. I need to, I got in a dispute with my wife and we're fighting over custody. I need to get a hot water tank because I don't have hot water.
Yeah.
A trigger happens, right? Where if it's Lululemon pants, they're just like, it's an internally triggered thing. They just want to feel better about themselves. Well, the identity part of that whole thing on the externally triggered, particularly grudge purchase side, is that I'm going to make the smart purchase decision, right? I am a good consumer of these transactional things that I want, for all intents and purposes, to be invisible, right, in my life. So we really start to look at, why does somebody change a brand? Well, in beer, something happened, right? In a hot water tank, something happened. But a whole bunch of your clients already have a guy, right? They already have the guy, right? The devil right? That has demonstrated enough empathy and competence to earn their opportunity again, until such time as they lose that confidence, right? That comes from empathy and competence. We then move to the next phase of that, and that's convenience.
Yeah.
Right. And if we don't have convenience, we have exclusivity. Again, back to identity. In the beer, I might switch from Bud to a craft beer. Why? It's a premium price. You're paying a higher amount.
It also says something about
But it says something about it, right?
Guy.
It creates an exclusivity, which is
You're
identity
a connoisseur.
driven.
You're not just a
right. Bud is convenient because it's consistent. It's true. McDonald's, it's convenient. It's consistent. It's going to give you that same expectation every single time. It's fast. It's reliable. It's the things that you're looking for in various moments.
It's not the best breakfast sandwich in town, but I can get one in 15 seconds.
But it gets it done, right? And that's exactly it. Now, they don't have tea in Salt Lake City, but that's a whole other story. So it's deeply valuable for us to understand that we change within ourselves as much as we, sometimes we're transactional about things, sometimes we're relational. But we're always going to be transactional until you give us a reason to be relational.
Given no other data, give me the cheap one, I guess.
Give me the cheap one, right? Again, we can pull that lever as well. It's not about only working with the cheap brands in town that's going to get you the business. Absolutely not. Cheap falls into what the difference between cheap and low price is. Well, the low price, the low cost, in another perspective, is money, energy, and time, right? Before, during, and after the sale. Again, this convenience thing keeps cropping up as a thing, right? I will wait for that fancy special order Porsche to come in.
I'll wait until I'm old enough that I can afford it.
Wait till I'm old enough
to have it when I'm 25.
Right.
Very few people who are 25 are buying it.
Exactly. So I'm willing to own a plethora of cars before that till I get to my goals and ambitions and dreams, right? But it's an identity piece. It's an element that's saying, this is who I am. That hot water tank. Well, if I want an astounding amount of convenience for the longest period of time, I'm very willing to spend more money on that hot water tank. If I had a house full of 8 kids, I'm buying a tankless water heater. If I'm looking for better insurance, I'm looking for how I'm going to get taken care of when something happens, as much as I'm looking at 15% off or more, right? All of these things start to factor into what is the strategy. The strategy will inform the message will inform the channels, and we have ourselves
and that's the part that works on you.
Full meal deal.
It's the strategy.
It's the strategy, right? And strategy without weight, right? If you're a company that has no values, right? And everyone's going to be up in arms for hearing that and say, oh my God, of course I have values. We have core values.
For quality, service, selection, price, convenient location, free parking, and professional staff who really cares about your needs. Don't tell me I don't stand for anything.
Right? Table stakes. And table stakes just don't move the meter. There's this bouncer in our brain, just front of the left ear, named Broca. And Broca is there to toss out the predictable. Right? This Broca bouncer is not letting you into club imagination without doing something new, different, and interesting. If it's predictable, it's not worth investigating, and you're going to get tossed down the alley. Once you get into club imagination, you've got to say something. You need auditory message. You need some sort of visual impact that pairs you up and brings you up. But you're going to keep dancing in there and making friends until they need your thing. Right? And in some cases, you're going to get moved into the VIP room, and that's where you have the chance to close those deals, right? But you need to have that bonding relationship that never happened if you didn't get past Broca in the first place. Right. So ultimately, what we're talking about here is making sure that we absolutely do punch as hard as we possibly can with the message. Otherwise, we are going to lose the time and attention of the public. Entertainment is the currency that we use, right? Make them laugh, make them cry, make them angry.
Make them feel something.
Yeah.
Feel. Notice it.
Right?
Notice us.
And that's our mortar.
But again, that's sort of maybe the wrap up of it is just because there's a lot of mediocre advertising that doesn't work doesn't mean that the medium's wrong. Doesn't mean that the theory of advertising is wrong. There's lots of stuff that is either not talking to me because I'm not the right target. It's not talking to me because it's not the right time. It's not talking to me because it's the same old table stakes things, and so they're undifferentiated from all the competitors. And there's a lot of that stuff out there, and I chalk that up in my head as advertising that doesn't work. But that doesn't mean that advertising doesn't work. That's like saying there's no good music out there. No, the stuff that's in the top 40 is pretty good. There are hundreds of millions of things on Spotify and Bandcamp and whatever that are unlistenable. But that doesn't mean music is bad. It means it's not talking to you.
Well, and in fact, I would go so far as to say that the fact that most advertising is rubbish is a tremendous opportunity for the new advertiser, because all you have to do is beat that, and the bar is not high. It's ridiculously low. The trouble is you actually have to do something different. You have to say, well, what would you put into your advertising if we removed quality, service, selection, price, convenient location, free parking, and professional staff who really cares about your needs? If you took all of that out, is there anything left? If not, you've got a problem.
Yes.
If there's something really, really specific that you can say, well, this is a thing about us that you can't say about any of the other people in our town who do the thing that we do,
Guess what? That's going to work.
You just won everyone.
Yeah. And by God, don't take the advice of the guy who's saying quality service, selection, price, convenient, free parking, and his advertising is not working. Don't take his advice. He's the guy who's doing it wrong.
Use that to beat him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, guys, to sum it up, I think we can all agree. Most ads don't work. Pretty much the vast majority, right? Pretty much all of it. Complete waste of money. And if it's a complete waste of money, don't spend the money. And that's because the writing and the distribution are wrong, right? Advertising that gets true results for the companies that deliver an actual solution that stand them 600 feet above the competition. They're actually doing a thing that has them get noticed, right? And they're doing it consistently. Not just different, but distinctive, right? Really doing something that isn't like everyone else, like all of us. We're all unique. A snowflake butterfly, that's like extra unique.
Something they have in Canada.
You have to get all the ingredients right to have the Michelin star marketing plan, right? You really do. And if you're in a category where no one is talking, table stakes are going to work, right? Like when you're speaking into an empty echo chamber, it's pretty easy. You can pretty much do anything to get attention. But if you're up against stiff competition and a grand ambition for your company, this work should not be left to amateurs, salespeople. Was that a fair statement? Right?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, salespeople, unfortunately, do you mean like salespeople at the media?
Yeah, media channel, like guys.
The trouble with those particular people is, unfortunately, they also work for your competition. And so it's not actually in that person's interest to have you
crush your competition,
to crunch your competition and put them out of business. I absolutely want to put your customer out of your competitor out of business. I absolutely want to do it. I want them to close. I want their children to not go to college. I want everything about their business to fail, and I want them living underneath a bridge. Your advertising sales rep at the TV station does not have that.
No, that's not within the spec.
He's not nearly as much of an asshole as I am.
He seems like he's a much nicer guy.
Not the scope of work. Yeah. What it sounds like to me, though, in reverse of that, is that you're looking for that person who's going to agonize over every last word, every last dollar, every last impression that the buyer is going to have of your brand in every way. It's the difference between becoming known, in my opinion, and becoming an actual household name. Two distinctly different things. People can know your name. When you're a household name, people care.
Well, if we assume that 90% of advertising is rubbish, which is probably a fair number, then that means you have to be in the top 10. And you're not going to get into the top 10 by just saying what everybody else is saying. That's where agonizing over the message and getting it exactly right and saying, it's not quite hitting right. It's just not standing out quite right. We need to change this. We need to change that. We need to up our game in the production side. We need to make it look really good. We need to make it sound really good. We need to do another take with that actor to get that delivery just exactly right. That's how you get there. It's not by accident. It's by hard freaking work.
It is. And people often, wonder why our strategies, our creatives, our media strategies all work so well, because they work consistently well every single time. And it's to that exact moment, at that exact point that you're making, that we're rejecting what you're supposed to hear. We're replacing it with something new, unexpected, something distinctive, not just different. And then we carpet bomb the living crap out of the designated target area, regardless of what medium we're using, for what budget we're using, with a monstrous repetition that is going to get it pushed back into that long-term memory that we're trying to take up and build our McMansion in of our clients' brands. If you don't have the right words at the right frequency, your brand only gets so far before it just needs that lift, right? Your truck wrap's only going to get you so far. Your logo's only going to get you so far.
All of those things will get you your fair share. And your fair share is the amount of dollars that are being spent in your category, in your market, divided by the number of providers. And that's not enough to make yourself successful.
And that's it, right? Like, if you don't get the basic premise right, you're going to get to a diminishing returns faster, right? You're going to get your fair share, but then
our clients do not get their fair share. No, it's not acceptable.
But we also have to have those same clients spending that money, investing in it, depending on the size of their cities, right? We can't do this for free. It's going to take some elbow grease. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some durability in their reasonableness around how long is their purchase cycle, right? The customer isn't going to be buying your thing right now all the time. We have to talk to the ones before they get to the Googles so that we can get them feeling good about us so that when it does come time, we already won the game.
They've already made the decision.
Yeah. So really, really fire here, guys. This is really, really great. Ultimately,
Advertising totally works. Who are we kidding?
advertising does totally work, and
Except for the part that's rubbish.
the smart stuff is really about moving the who gives a shit meter.
Yeah.
Right? Let's move the who gives a shit meter. And we have to do that two ways. One, with the words that we use, but also talking to the same people over and over and over again. Right?
And it's not easy.
Even if it's a little amount, it's way better than putting your chips on the roulette wheel at Casino Google and hoping for the
Taking a
best.
shot.
Right?
That's it.
Until next time, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for joining us on Advertising in America. We hope you enjoyed the show and captured a nugget of marketing magic. Want to hear more? Subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with your friends. Do you have questions or topics you want us to cover? Join us on our socials at Advertising in America. Want to spend your marketing budget better? Visit us at wizardofads.services to book your free strategy session with Wizard Ryan Shute today. Until next time, keep your ads enchanting and your audience captivated.